we come to the first urgent question on NHS pensions. I call Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care if he will make a statement on NHS pensions in light of the statutory deadline for both remedial service statements and remedial pension savings statements being missed.
Minister Karin Smyth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for Hinckley and Bosworth for asking this question. It gives me the opportunity to provide further information in line to the written parliamentary statement that I updated the House on yesterday on the delivery of remedial service statements to affected members. I have extended the deadlines for NHS Business Services Authority to issue statements to ensure that members have enough time to make informed decisions. Once members have received statements, they will be able to use a HMRC tool to retrospectively adjust their annual allowance between 2015 and 16 and 2022-23. Separately, the original deadline to issue the 137,000 remedial pension savings statements was 6th of October. The NHS Business Services Authority issued statements to 57,000 members by this deadline, of which 23,000 were found to contain incorrect information and have since been recalculated and reissued. The NHS Business Services Authority are working to issue outstanding statements as quickly as possible. A revised delivery timetable has been developed and shared with trade unions and employer representatives. By the end of March, 106,000 statements had been issued. Statements for 11,000 members will be produced once further information is received from their employers. The remaining 20,000 statements require additional manual input from the NHS Business Services Authority before they can produce and will be issued in July. There have been delays on all sides that we've been aware of since last June. In fact, the Department had escalated issues of design, as I'm sure he understands, with the previous government. We know that this is really important and that there are high numbers of high earners in the NHS, and that is why we have taken the decision to be open and transparent about the timeline we can now commit to, having worked tirelessly to reduce the delays. Although these delays will cause inconvenience to some members, I've been crystal clear that no one will face any financial detriment as a consequence of these delays. Compensation arrangements are in place for direct financial losses, certain HMRC interest charges and the cost of financial and accountancy advice. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government does acknowledge the impact of the delays upon affected members. We're working hard to issue outstanding statements and to protect members from any financial detriment that the delays may cause.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And what is going on in NHS pension administration under this government? I declare an interest as someone with an NHS pension. And today the government has missed the statutory deadline for issuing remedial service statements to doctors, and now pushing the deadlines back to December 2026. In mid-March, the government confirmed just 21 statements had been issued out of 380,000. And as of yesterday's written statement, that figure still remains over 370,000 outstanding. This creates huge tax liability uncertainty. We and the BMA have been raising concerns for months, so why has it taken the government so long to act? Ministers have announced a revised delivery plan, but how will this work in practice? Will there be more staff to help with the backlog? And what changes are being put in place to ensure the deadline isn't missed again? But what was most concerning, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the complete absence of any mention in the Remedial Pension Savings Statement, in the written statement. This really matters, as doctors who are taking on overtime, who work privately, rely on these statements to be able to track their contributions and avoid excessive tax bills. Dr. Sharma from the BMA said, "There's no doubt that without an up-to-date information, doctors will be preemptively reducing or turning down extra work to avoid additional pension bills that might not even be due." Now, the statutory deadline for the 137,000 of these statements was, as we heard, the 6th of October 2024. In February, ministers confirmed 60,000 outstanding, and the majority would be issued by the end of February. But by March, the backlog had actually grown to 70,000. So can the minister explain how two legal deadlines have been missed? Will the government be following up with the regulator to ensure this doesn't happen again? And does the government have confidence in the NHS Business Service Authority, especially with the Secretary of State abolishing NHS England? What does this mean for the future of this vital organisation? Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we all want to see waiting lists fall, but as one newspaper put it today, Labour's pledge to slash NHS waiting lists is being sabotaged by a litany of administrative errors, pension delays and punitive tax rules. I urge the government to take swift action.
Minister Smyth.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I outlined in my response and in the WNS, we have taken action. We, in coming into office in June, were made aware of some of these problems. We have pushed the NHS Business Authority to move faster than they would have done under his government, so that remedial action is happening quicker than it would ordinarily done. And yes, we do have faith in NHS Business Authority to get on with this now and make sure that there is no financial detriment, in line with the outline of timetable that was made clear yesterday and I've further made clear today. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, he could have asked me more about waiting lists, which have been falling for the last 5 months in a row. He could have asked me about the 2 million more appointments that have been put forward to deliver for patients 7 months earlier. He could have asked me about the hundreds more GPs that are now working in their health service. He could have asked me about what the impact of cancelling those strikes has been on services for people. He could have asked about the record funding. In fact, last week when he was here, he was speaking on behalf of the NPA. This week, he could have congratulated the agreement of my honourable friend here in order to produce more pharmacy services. Every day, we are making improvements to the NHS. The Darcy report reported not only the breadth of the decline that we inherited back June, but also the depth. We are resolving that. We are fixing the fundamentals of the NHS.
Smyth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for coming here and giving her this response. We all know the issues the Minister is talking about when she talks about the inheritance that we've got with regards to the NHS, and I particularly would echo that with the issues that I see from patients and staff at PAH in my constituency of Harlow. But on the matter of pensions, can the Minister outline what the Government has done to mitigate the delays in this process?
Minister. Well, I thank you for that. And it is important that people have confidence in the pension system. And that is why we took action in June upon coming into office to understand the depth of the problems that were occurring under the previous government. This is a complicated issue. That's why we want to be clear with people. There will be no financial detriment to them. We will continue to work with employers and their trade unions to make sure that this is resolved as quickly as possible in the timelines that I've outlined.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Helen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The delays will be deeply worrying and will make financial planning very difficult for those affected. All of those people being people who have dedicated their working lives to supporting the NHS and tirelessly saving lives. NHS workers and their families are being left in the dark by the government delays and may miss out on using their full allowances as a result, which is unacceptable. They deserve better. Now, the revised delivery plan prioritises members based on their likelihood of facing financial detriment. So clearly some financial detriment is expected for those impacted. Can the Minister estimate what the likely financial detriment is of missing the statutory deadline, or how much compensation that she just mentioned is likely to be paid? Can she tell us why the NHS Business Services Authority has failed to meet the deadlines? In a written question to my honourable friend, the member for St Albans, she said that there are 112 people working on it, and I wondered whether she could confirm that that is likely to be sufficient to ensure future deadlines are met.
I thank the honourable lady for that question. On the exact numbers that are working on this, I don't have that to hand, and will make sure that I respond to her in writing. We are making sure that individuals do not face detriment as a result of these days. A compensation scheme, the NHS Cost Back Scheme, provides resources for direct financial losses incurred by the NHS pension scheme members impacted by the McLeod remedy. That includes professional service fees and certain HMRC interest charges that may arise, which I've outlined in my statement. HMRC have also confirmed that self-assessment late filling penalties will be waived upon appeal in certain circumstances where a member receives a delayed pension savings statement as a consequence of the implementation of the McLeod remedy.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that it's important that the affected members receive those statements that allow informed decision-makings? And the Government has worked to minimise financial detriment to those affected. But, of course, this was part of the mess that we've been clearing up. And we have had record investments into pharmacy, more GPs, cut waiting lists, and the junior doctor strike has stopped. So we are on the road to recovery.
Well, I thank her for that, and she, of course, is absolutely right. We are on the road to recovery, and that's, of course, what they can't stand opposite, is it? This is a complicated issue, which they well know. As I said, we inherited that complication in June, we were made well aware of it. They could have done something more about it whilst they're in government. Yet again, yet another issue that they've let people down, this time staff. We will make sure that we do remedy that. The timelines are available in the written ministerial statement that was laid yesterday, and we will continue to work with trade unions and the employers to make sure that people understand, as my honourable friend said, it is absolutely important people do understand their own personal positions.
Select Committee Chair Leila Moran.
Deputy Speaker, I have to say I am none the wiser about what exactly happened, because if we're going to ensure that this isn't going to happen again, that these deadlines are going to get met, then we need to know exactly how we got to this position. It may well be the fault of the previous government. So will this government commit to a full review of exactly how we got to this position, so that we can ensure that those deadlines that have been published will be met this time?
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for that question. I think she makes a good point, as so often, on what has gone on previously. This is, of course, an issue for the McLeod judgment across many government departments, across previous government as well, and issues that, in fact, happened starting with the coalition government. So, for my own time on the Public Accounts Committee, and I know the Treasury Committee have looked at this over time, and the department would certainly cooperate with any inquiry or look at that across government, and happy to get back to her on that point.
Josh Fenton-Glynn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This issue appears to be yet another example of the hangover left by the party opposite. Does the Minister agree with me that part of getting the NHS back on its feet include both cleaning up this mess and also cutting the waiting lists that have dropped 5 months in a row?
Minister.
I thank him for that point, and of course he makes absolutely the right point that as I said previously, Lord Darcy helpfully outlined the breadth of the mess that we inherited back in July. It makes for stark reading. We've still not had an apology from the party opposite. I'm happy to take a point at any one point if they decide to do that. But what we're seeing here in some of these issues that we've picked up is really the depth of destruction that they have caused across wide parts of government. We will continue to fix that on behalf of the British people.
Dr Andrew Murison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I declare my interest as a practising doctor and a public sector pensioner who's been through the McLeod process. Does the Minister understand that we won't improve productivity in the NHS as far as doctors are concerned if we continue seeing them routinely retire in their mid-50s in their prime, which they do because their accountants tell them they would be extremely foolish not to, given the fiscal environment and the way that the NHS pension scheme is structured?
Minister.
I do understand, and it's obviously a source of much discussion and change through the course of the pandemic to encourage people to return. It is a complicated issue. We want to continue to use the skills of doctors at all stages of their careers, and we'll continue to work with them and the BMA and others to make sure that there is no detriment to them returning to service in the NHS.
Lewis Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I declare an interest as a member of the NHS pension scheme. Can the Minister confirm that this issue only arose because the previous government carried out their NHS pension reforms in a way that was found to be age discriminatory? And more widely, does she agree with me that giving NHS staff the terms and conditions and the reward and recognition that they deserve also requires prompt action each year on agreeing the NHS pay award, something the party opposite routinely failed to do when in government?
Minister.
Again, I thank him for that point, and again he makes an excellent point about that our commitment to staff, being clear on the terms and conditions and that reward, and honouring that, and that's why we were make sure that we acted promptly coming into office in June, and that we have issued those statements and parliamentary questions to make sure that people are clear and that we are transparent.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Of course, it takes a rather long time to train a doctor, up to 6 years. So it was a good job that the last government actually trained more doctors, so we had the opportunity. But will she look at one of the aspects that is concerned, and that is if doctors start reducing their overtime hours because of fiscal aspects, it will hamper the opportunity to actually get more patients treated and shorten the length of the waiting list.
Exactly right. Minister.
As I said in response to his honourable friend, we do understand that. We will obviously continue to work with all staff in the NHS to make sure that we deliver on that commitment to reduce the waiting list, a shocking level that was left by the previous government.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have a constituent who is affected by this issue, who is suffering both financial and emotional distress as a result of these circumstances. I wrote to NHS BSA and it took 4 months to get a response. In response to written questions to the government, I asked how I might make representations about my constituent being affected by financial distress, and the response I received from ministers simply said that NHS BSA has all the evidence they need and there is no need for anyone to provide extra evidence. There is a very real risk that some people who are affected are suffering financial distress but have not been identified by NHS BSA. So for those people, could the Minister please outline what mechanism we as members can use to make those people known to NHS BSA so they can access their pension choice earlier?
Minister.
Well, I'm obviously sorry to hear about the, especially the emotional distress and financial distress of her constituent. And if that is a gap there, I'm very happy to go back to NHS Business Authority on her behalf and make sure that I update the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister have full confidence in the Chair of the NHS Business Services Authority?
Minister.
As I said in my statement, we have confidence in the Business Authority to undertake the actions that I have previously outlined.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for her answers to the questions. With waiting lists being beyond the pale as they are, were government able to address the Remedial Pension Savings Statement? We may be, I believe, in a better position to entice our doctors to take on additional hours. So will the Minister confirm that this is a government priority and that there is an understanding that a functioning NHS requires straightforward paths to work, overtime and payment at every level? Thank you so much.
Minister.
I thank him for that question. Clearly, one of our major priorities is making sure the entire NHS workforce is there doing the work that they were trained for, that they are committed to, that they want to deliver, to get down those waiting lists and deliver the sort of NHS that we want to make fit for the future. The staff, as Lord Darcy outlined, have felt the detriment of the last government very severely. They're working under really difficult conditions, and we want to make sure through the 10-year plan and the long-term workforce plan that we offer them that hope to deliver the services that they were trained for the future.
Can I thank the Minister for her responses this afternoon? I will allow a moment for the front benches to swap over.